Noob mistakes. We all make them, and there is no shame in that because we all had to start somewhere. But in this video, I want to show you some of the most common mistakes that noobs make and how to avoid them. And the first one we have on our list is building too much point defense, or really just stationary defenses in general. And all point defense is just these autocannons that shoot tanks, or there can be anti-air and even artillery at Tech 2. And there's a couple reasons why you want to avoid building these, at least when you're first starting. The first is simply their cost. If I come over to an engineer and I try to build a point defense over here, you can see that it is worth 250 mass over here on the left. 250 mass at 5 mass per second is what that's saying. Now if I just come over to my factory over here and I try to build just a regular tank, you can see over here again, a tank only costs 56 mass. So you can build almost 5 tanks for one single point defense. And while yes, point defense are very good at killing tanks, they can probably take out about 5 tanks, point defense have one fatal flaw that tanks do not have. And that is, of course, the inability to move. With my small band of 6 medium tanks right here, they'd probably get killed very easily by these 3 point defense cannons, but I can just move them and go around. These 2 mass extractors my opponent has on the right over here are completely undefended at the moment, so I can just move these guys and take them out, and my opponent will still have to counter with something else. Right now, he has 3 point defense cannons costing a total of 750 mass. That's a lot of tanks worth of mass. If he put this much mass into an army, he could easily counter my small band of units right here if I were to attack, and he could easily counterattack and push out elsewhere on the map. But as it stands right now, these things are never moving, so he still has to counter with something else. And not only can point defense not move, but they're also relatively easy to counter. These tanks are going to get mopped up, but if you even have just a couple light artillery units with it, look at what happens. The artillery outranges the point defense. So if I tell just my 3 guys to go over here and take out this point defense, speed it up a little bit so we can see what happens. Look, they're shooting right outside the range of these point defense, and there's nothing these point defense can do about it. So again, if he put all this mass into tanks, the tanks would come and defend themselves. But as it stands right now, all this 750 mass just got mopped up pretty easily. And again, if we're assuming roughly 5 tanks per point defense, that's 15 tanks he would have had. He could have easily countered this force and been able to go elsewhere on the map, but that got mopped up extremely easily by just 3 light artilleries. Now, there are some scenarios when point defense can be helpful, but if you're just starting, honestly, don't worry about them. Just focus on building an army. You'll probably be much better off. Next up, we have not using the commander on the front lines and instead keeping him inside your base the whole time. While yes, it's true he is twice as good as a regular Tech 1 engineer, he's about 20 times as good as a Tech 1 tank. So using him as an engineer puts you at an extreme disadvantage if your opponent is using him as an early tank. For instance, pretend we have this little incursion going on up here that we saw earlier. Maybe I have a couple extra tanks on this part of the map up here. I can use my commander as a 3rd sort of lane push down here, and he can take care of himself very kindly, at least in the early game. I'm going to go ahead and cheat and just teleport him close to the front line like so. So just pretend I walked him all the way out here, and now they have a small band of Mary units on their own over here, and this commander will absolutely just stomp them. So let's just watch. Again, I'll speed it up a little bit as he gets closer. For one thing, he has bigger range, so he can just sit here and annihilate them. But 2, he has almost 12,000 health starting out, and the average tank is about 300 health. So this guy can absolutely hold his own, and not only can he just mop up units like this, but he also has an engineering suite. So at least in the early game, instead of having him help in the base, send him off, and you might want to support him. Otherwise you can get caught out and cut off fairly easily, but don't neglect your commander. And all that is not even mentioning this overcharge ability, which anything in this circle, if you shoot it, will be incinerated. You do have to have at least one energy storage to be able to use the overcharge ability, but that's fairly easy to make, and it makes the commander that much more deadly. And with both of those first tips in mind, that leads me to my next tip, which is not expanding and or just turtling too hard. I too was guilty of this, but really you want to expand as much as you can. All I've done off screen is just build mass extractors where my units already were. These 4 units up here, they closed off this section of the map, so I just used an engineer to come and build some mass extractors. All these units up in the middle, they were already here. All I did was just tell an engineer to just come and build some mass extractors. Again, down here, the commander took care of himself and he has an engineering suite, so he built his own mass extractors here. And just look at how much of the map I control now. Incidentally, this is called map control. And generally, you want to control as much as you can because a mass extractor pays for itself within only a few seconds. So if you can build this and keep it alive for even 10 seconds, you've already gotten more mass than it's taken to build. And as long as you have this, it's going to be more mass that you can use to build more units to kill your opponent. And trust me, it might seem intimidating, but it really is not that difficult to work into your playstyle. If you just build just a couple tanks and you just send them off to harass something, the enemy has to send at least a couple tanks to defend against it. And that is going to be more brain tax than just building them and just sending them across the map. The next mistake to avoid is not spending these resources you have efficiently. You're probably thinking, okay, Green Squire, now I have all these resources, I have all this map control, but I don't know what to do with all these resources. I'm getting so much, I literally don't need any more because I don't know what to spend it on. And that's actually really easy. What do you spend it on? Just more. It doesn't even matter what more of. Just build more factories. If you have 3 factories and you're still overflowing, heck, build 3 more factories. If that's not good enough for you, or maybe the opponent's a higher tech level, you're probably going to want to think about teching up yourself. In general, the rule is if you're under immediate pressure, you probably want to build more Tech 1 factories to be able to match that pressure and push back. If you are not under pressure, that probably means the opponent is teching up, and you probably want to start teching up yourself. But in general, it's very easy to spend more resources. Either just upgrade your factories, upgrade your mass extractors, upgrade your radar, or you can just build more things. This next tip also has to do with resources and resource income, and that is not reclaiming. Reclaiming is unique to Supreme Commander in that when things die, they leave carcasses. So if I look over at these blasted point defense over here, and I press Control and Shift at the same time, you can see these numbers pop up. And what this is the reclaim value that if you were to take an engineer, say this guy, and I press Control and Shift at the same time, and I hover over this little reclaim button appears. And basically what that means is that amount of mass will go directly back into my economy, and I can use it to build more things. If you're just starting out, it might seem like it's not worth the time to go and do this, but trust me, it definitely is. At Tech 1, when a tank is worth 56 mass over here, and even in just my base, there shouldn't be anything dead over here, there's just a bunch of rocks and things. Look at these rocks. I zoom out, 120, 50, 10, and 10, that's almost 200 mass right there. That is 4 tanks on the field. These rocks are just 4 free tanks. And again, if I look over here, there's another pile of rocks. That's another 4 free tanks. If I come over here, there's more rocks even still. That's a good bunch of units, just literally for free, just sitting around in my base. Right when I come in, I can send an engineer to go reclaim these, and it instantly jump starts my army. So do me a favor, zoom out, press Control Shift, and just grab an engineer, and it's easy enough as just doing an attack move across the map. If you click this button here, or for me, if I hold the Alt button, the attack move thing pops up. Grab an engineer, press attack move, and then just send him over to where there's some mass, and he'll automatically scoop up anything he sees along the way. Yeah, he'll probably die, but if he scoops up all this mass along the way, he will well have paid for himself and then some. And my last noob mistake to avoid is not playing with other people. Yes, I know it can be intimidating. I was in the same boat. But I have some coaches in my Discord who helped me out tremendously when I was first learning and honestly still help me out today. Having a high rated player help you in your exact playstyle is so incredibly helpful. I'll leave a link for it in my description down below, and as with basically my entire channel, it is noob welcoming, noob friendly, so don't be afraid to join even if you are just absolutely brand new or just starting out. But yeah guys, that'll just about wrap it up for this video. Hope you enjoyed and stay tuned for more to come.